There's a certain kind of quiet that settles in a house in the late afternoon. It's a heavy quiet, full of dust motes dancing in the last bits of sunlight. My hands trace the edges of a small wooden frame on the mantelpiece. They're old hands, wrinkled and spotted, but they remember the feel of this photograph. It's my father, captured in black and white, standing straight in his only good suit. He looks proud, the way a man does when he's earned his place, but there's a tightness around his mouth, a tension in his shoulders. He isn't looking at the camera. He's looking through it, as if expecting a challenge from the other side. I wipe the glass clean, a slow, circular motion. He always said, his voice more a rumble than a word, "Son, all we have in this world is our good name. Don't you ever let them take it from you." I spent the better part of my life holding on to that instruction like it was scripture. I thought it was a simple map for survival. Work hard, be honest, stay quiet, and keep your name clean. But now, I wonder if that good name was a shield, or if it was just a heavier load to carry. A spotless reputation you have to polish every single day, even when your arms are tired, just so nobody questions why you're in the room. What's the price of a name they can't tarnish? It's a question that takes a lifetime to even begin to answer, and I've had a long time to think on it. My name is Harold Eugene Mitchell. I'm 80 years old now, and I've been carrying that name, my father's name, and his father's before him for every one of those years. The weight of it changes over time. When I was a young man, it felt like a suit of armor, something polished and strong to keep me safe from the world's judgments. As I grew older, it started to feel more like a uniform, something I had to wear just right so nobody would question my place. Now it just feels like my own skin. I remember one evening, must have been in my late 20s, my son, David's father, was just a baby then, and I was driving home from a second job I'd picked up painting houses. The car was a second-hand Ford, and it chose that particular dusky road, miles from anywhere, to give up. A sputter, a cough, and then just silence. The kind of deep country silence that makes you feel very small and very alone. I wasn't worried about the car. I could fix it. I was worried about the dark, about the time, about my wife waiting at home with our boy. I just wanted to get home. That feeling, the simple need to return to your family, is a powerful thing. Then I saw the flashing lights in my rearview mirror, red and blue painting the trees. For a moment, a man might feel relief. Help has arrived. But that's not what I felt. It was a different kind of feeling, a cold, sharp knot that tightened in my stomach. It was a feeling I knew well, a silent alarm that tells you to be careful. I took a deep breath, turned off the ignition key that was already useless, and stepped out of the car slowly. I made sure my hands were out of my pockets, visible in the fading light. Every movement was deliberate, a quiet performance I didn't have to think about. It was instinct. The officer, a young white man, got out of his patrol car. He didn't ask if I needed a hand or if I was all right. He stood there, his hand resting near his side, and the first words out of his mouth were, "This your car, boy?" I was a homeowner, a husband, a father. But in that moment, I was just boy. I felt a flash of heat behind my eyes, but I swallowed it. That was the price. I kept my voice even, calm. "Yes, sir, it is. Mitchell, Harold Mitchell." The engine just stopped on me. I offered him my name like a shield, the one thing my father told me to protect. He walked a slow circle around my Ford, shining his flashlight into the windows, onto the tires, as if the car itself were a suspect. Then he shined it directly into my face, and I stood there, letting the light blind me, not flinching. Inside, I was running through a list. My license and registration are in the glove box. My hands are empty. My voice is steady. I was performing the role of a man who was not a threat, a man who deserved the simple decency of help without suspicion. It was the most exhausting work I'd done all day, and it had nothing to do with painting houses. It was the work of simply standing still. After what felt like an eternity, he lowered the flashlight. He went back to his car and called for a tow truck. He gave me the details. His voice all business now, professional. The interaction was over. On paper, nothing had happened. He hadn't laid a hand on me. He hadn't raised his voice. He had in the end helped. But as he drove away, leaving me in the quiet darkness again, I didn't feel grateful. I felt hollowed out. I felt the immense weight of the energy it had taken to stand on the side of that road and prove, without saying a word, that I was worthy of a phone call. That's a heavy price for a broken engine. For a long time after that night, I would replay the whole thing in my head, trying to find the moment where I could have done something different. The young man in me, the one full of pride and fire, wanted to have said something back. He wanted to ask the officer what gave him the right to call a grown man boy. He wanted to stand a little taller, to let the anger show in his eyes. But the husband and father in me, the one who just wanted to get home to his wife and child, knew that silence was the only currency I had that he might accept. Survival is a quiet, lonely negotiation. You trade pieces of your pride for another sunrise. The conflict wasn't just with the man in the uniform. The real battle was inside my own mind. Part of me felt ashamed for being so compliant, for making myself small just to make him feel big. Another part of me, the part that lived to see my son grow up, felt a grim sort of victory. I had navigated the situation perfectly. I had kept my name clean, just like my father taught me. I had not given him any reason. But that's the trick, isn't it? You can spend your whole life being the perfect citizen, the perfect man, and still find yourself standing on the side of a road, having to prove you're worthy of basic decency. Even now, sitting here all these years later, I don't have a simple answer for that young man I was. I can't tell him he was wrong, and I can't tell him he was entirely right. I just know that the weight of that choice settled deep in my bones and never really left. It wasn't a single event, it was a lesson. It taught me that sometimes the heaviest thing you have to carry isn't the burden of a bad reputation, but the unending effort required to maintain a good one. It's an invisible labor, a constant quiet performance to prove you are who you say you are. A good man. Harold Mitchell. I see my grandson David at my kitchen table on a Sunday afternoon. He's a good young man, works hard as a graphic designer, and he has a fire in him that reminds me of myself at his age. He's stirring a cup of coffee that's long gone cold, telling me about a promotion he's trying to get. His boss told him in a review that he needs to be more of a team player, and that his contributions in meetings can feel a little intense. He's turning the words over and over, trying to understand what he's doing wrong. He thinks it's a flaw in his character, something he needs to fix. I just sit there and listen, watching him, and I see the same exhaustion I've felt 1,000 times. What he hears as feedback, I hear as an old, familiar tune. The words are different now, of course. They're smoother, wrapped in the kind of language they use in offices with big glass windows. But be a team player is just a new way of saying don't get ahead of yourself. And less intense is a polite way of asking a man to quiet the ambition in his spirit so it doesn't make anyone uncomfortable. It's the same quiet request I got on the side of that road. Make yourself smaller. Sand down your edges. Don't take up too much space. He thinks it's a performance review. I know it's the tax he has to pay for being who he is in a room where they didn't expect him to lead. I spent a lifetime building a good name, believing it was a shield I could pass down. I thought if I worked hard enough, stayed quiet enough, and proved myself enough, the road would be smoother for him. But listening to David, I see that the road isn't smoother. It's just paved differently. He's facing the same crossroads I did, caught between the pride that tells him to stand tall and the instinct that warns him to survive. The demand to prove you're worthy, to prove you're not a threat, is still there. It just wears a nicer suit now and calls itself professional development. He's still being asked to perform, just on a different kind of stage. My father's lesson about a good name was the bedrock of my life. For more than 60 years, I truly believed it was a shield. If I was honest, if I was dependable, if I was Harold Mitchell who paid his bills on time and never caused a fuss, then that name would protect me. I thought it was like a suit of armor I was building piece by piece with every quiet act of dignity, every swallowed bit of anger. I imagined that one day it would be so strong and so polished that the world would have no choice but to see the man inside and not the color of his skin. It was a simple, hopeful kind of faith, a belief that respect could be earned once and for all. But the truth I learned much later in life is that a good name isn't a shield at all. It's just a heavier load to carry. A shield stops the arrows from hitting you. A heavy load just makes you stronger, or it breaks your back. My name didn't stop that officer from seeing a boy on the side of the road. It just raised the stakes of my performance. It didn't protect my grandson from being told he was too much. It just gave him a more complicated puzzle to solve. The world doesn't stop testing you because you have a good reputation. In fact, it watches you more closely, waiting for a crack in the polish, waiting for you to stumble under the weight of it all. And that's the cruelest part of the lesson. When you carry a name you've worked so hard to keep clean, the cost of failure feels catastrophic. You're not just failing yourself. You feel like you're failing your father, your family, and every other person who looks like you and is trying to build the same thing. One mistake, one moment of anger, one slip up, and you haven't just tarnished your name, you've proven them right. That silent fear turns your dignity into a constant, exhausting performance. You're no longer just a man trying to live his life. You become a custodian of a fragile idea, and that is a lonely, heavy job. When I see young people walk into a room now, a meeting room, a doctor's office, any place where they are being measured, I watch their shoulders. I see them take a small, quiet breath before they open the door. It's a preparation. They are putting on the day's armor, polishing that good name before anyone has even had a chance to see it. It's in the careful way they choose their words, making sure each one is just right, not too loud, not too soft. They are performing a version of themselves they believe the world will accept without question. I recognize the energy it takes. It's the same energy I used on the side of that road. It is the invisible work of earning your own space. Sometimes a person's silence says more than any speech ever could. We're taught to value the one who speaks the loudest, the one with all the answers. But I've learned to listen to the quiet ones, to the pauses between words. There's a whole life story in a hesitation. It might be the story of a man choosing his words carefully so he isn't misunderstood, or a woman holding back a brilliant idea because she's been taught her voice doesn't belong. We mistake that silence for weakness or for having nothing to say, but often it's a sign of immense strength. It is the sound of a person carrying a heavy load with dignity, choosing survival over satisfaction in that single moment. We spend so much of our time looking for big moments, for grand gestures of character, but I think real humanity is found in the smallest, quietest details. It's in the way a person holds your gaze just a second longer to let you know you've been heard. It's in the choice to ask a question instead of making an assumption. It's in recognizing the exhaustion behind someone's smile at the end of a long day. These aren't things that build a reputation you can put on a resume, but they are the things that build a life. They are the quiet acknowledgments that say, I see the weight you are carrying, and I see you. That, I think, is a kindness that costs nothing and is worth everything. And so I find myself back here at the mantelpiece, my hand resting on the cool glass of the frame. The afternoon light has softened, and my father's face in the photograph seems less tense now and more tired. I see him differently. I used to see a man who had built a fortress around his name, a proud man who had won. Now I see a man who was carrying the same heavy load I have, perhaps an even heavier one. That tightness around his mouth wasn't just determination, it was the physical strain of holding back 1,000 unspoken words. He wasn't looking for a challenge from the other side of the camera. He was just trying to hold his ground, to stand perfectly still under the weight of it all. I set the frame back in its place, the wood warm from my touch. The dust will settle on it again tomorrow, as it always does. A good name isn't a trophy you win and put on a shelf for all to see. It's the quiet, invisible work of a lifetime, the sum of every swallowed word, every steady breath taken in the face of disrespect, every choice to get home safely instead of winning an argument. It's not a shield that stops the arrows, it's the strength you build from carrying the ones that land. You don't pass it down clean and polished, you just pass it down with the full knowledge of its weight, hoping the next hands are strong enough to hold it. My father gave me his name and a warning to protect it. I spent my life thinking that meant keeping it clean, polished, and free from any blemish. I thought if I did that, it would become a shield, something that could protect me and my own son from the world's harsh judgments. But a shield is meant to deflect blows, to make the journey easier. That's not what happened. The cleaner the name, the more was expected of me. The more I had to perform to be calm, to swallow my anger, to prove I was worthy of the space I occupied. It never stopped the arrows. It just demanded I stand straighter after I was hit. A good name is a heavy thing to carry. It is the weight of your father's unspoken fears and the weight of your children's future hopes, all resting on your shoulders. You carry it through every quiet indignity, every polite dismissal, every moment you choose silence for the sake of survival. It doesn't get lighter with time. You just learn how to walk with the strain, how to keep your back straight under the load. You hope that by carrying it with dignity, you make the road a little easier for those who come after. But in the end, you just pass the weight on, hoping their shoulders are strong enough for the journey. It makes me wonder about all the quiet efforts we never get to see. The invisible loads people carry just to get through the day with their dignity intact. We all have a story that doesn't make it into polite conversation, a performance we put on for the world while the real work happens inside. Perhaps the kindest thing we can offer one another is not advice, but attention, a moment of seeing the person behind the name they carry so carefully. If this conversation has brought someone to your mind, maybe just acknowledging the weight they bear is enough. I often think about that. I would be interested to hear your thoughts on it if you feel like sharing them.